Hello and welcome to episode 45 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701, coming to us from an iced-over Atlanta school bus, Greendragoon.
That's ice out there? In Atlanta?
Believe it or not. And I'm not saying he's an alien, but he's an alien. Markhawkman.
That was a hilarious TV show. Oh well.
Mm-hmm. And the man, behind the legend that is Pete Seeger, Hippiejohn.
That's a lot of people to be behind, but yeah, I'm sad Pete Seeger's gone.
Yes, yeah. Rest in peace. And before we get started, I just want to say I really liked having XR377 on last week because I think he'd be a great candidate in case someday I have to have one of you guys killed. I mean, if you leave the show for some reason. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, the news. And of course, the biggest news is that our good friends at PrimetimeUGC, and they really are our good friends, finally had the big Geko Foundry interview with Al Rivera. So we knew it was coming for a while. We didn't really know what he was going to say. And I know we probably all have kind of differing opinions on it, but I think for me, at least, and I think Hippie was also feeling this way, is that kind of very little has changed as far as just day-to-day stuff goes. Because, I mean, we still know that, a couple of little things are coming. We still know that there's no major development going on. And really, he was very honest about that, and I thought that was a good thing.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about Geko, is that he is very honest. I hate the answers that we got. I don't like them at all, but you're right. Very little has changed. How is today any different than yesterday, except for today you've had somebody give you an honest answer about the state of development in the Foundry. That's where I'm at with it. I don't like the answers, but hey.
And he didn't say no development. He just was honest and said that, look, I mean, the Foundry isn't going to be a priority right now. Apparently, in the scheme, they've decided to put some time and effort into PvP, which is a feature that has been thoroughly neglected.
We on this show have said multiple times we like PvP. We wish they would support it. So I'm well behind that idea.
It's the one thing that's gotten less support than us.
Yeah.
Over the years.
And in that regard, this map we're on was made as a concept demonstration of what you could do, but in Foundry for making a PvP map.
Yeah, we kind of hope that someday they recognize the potential that's there for making Foundry maps in PvP and give us a little cross development here. So, I mean, he did mention a couple things that are on the way, which I'm quite excited about, actually, and that is campaign support, which is essentially making a series of missions that you have to play the first one to go on to the second one.
Right.
I think that's really cool. That's a great feature from Neverwinter that I will definitely be using. And then the other one, of course, was Follow Author. We were told that Follow Author, told a long time ago that Follow Author was supposed to come with Season 8. Wasn't working properly, so they didn't put it in. Apparently, it's still coming. So that's good. Because I think, people are going to see, it's especially good for like spotlight authors because, I know a lot of spotlight authors, namely me, who do not have huge amount of plays on their non-spotlight missions. So this is going to help with that. People are going to play my spotlight and go, oh, this guy's cool. I want to follow him and play his other missions so that way they'll be able to see my other missions really easily.
Oh, no.
Not that it's hard to go and search by author. I mean, I don't think a lot of people use the advanced search options, but they're really easy.
People don't.
I almost always use them.
But
they're not
people don't.
Well, by people, I mean, the general audience rather than
they're not difficult, but they're not obvious.
That's the problem. Yeah, that's it. They're not difficult, but there's nothing anywhere that tells people that this is here, use it. You stumble across it if you're a general user. If you're someone who uses the Foundry, you find out about it from the rest of the Foundry playing and authoring community. But if you're just a general user, you don't find it.
Now he did say one thing that I didn't really quite agree with, which is that he was in favor of less options to be put in front of the player. And I kind of don't like that. I think more options is better in an MMO.
Well,
I think MMOs, it's all about options.
I get the feeling that it's a lot like something that, to use an example, they mentioned back in one of the Magic the Gathering development things where they reworked the way the game, one of the fundamental game mechanics to make it better by removing certain options from the player. Why? Well, in this specific example, I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to be true of all situations, but in that particular example, you had 3 options, one of which was the obvious best choice in 99% of the situations you could be in. So people would always use that choice, and everything else, the existence of the other options was irrelevant.
So, Drogan, I kind of consider you partially right. In fact, I consider both you and Geko right. You're right in that more options in MMOs is a good thing. However, more option in user interfaces is not always a good thing. In fact, often can be a very bad thing. There's a point at which it overwhelms the user experience and becomes too cluttered. I mean, I would almost say that
that's pretty much what he was addressing, right?
I mean,
yeah, is the search interface is what he was addressing.
I actually think a way would be more options, but spread out in a better way. I don't think it should all be cluttered under an advanced search. It's one of those ideas I've been kind of toying with more and more lately, is to take a stab at trying to redesign the Foundry search.
Well, Captain Hunter on the forums has put together a pretty good,
a really good one.
Yeah, a pretty good version of it. He posted it in the art forums, and I really like it because it has been going. It kind of goes along the same lines of what I've been saying all along, which is don't start with the list of missions. Start with like buttons or something that say that kind of go into the tag system. You say, okay, I know I want a story mission. You click on that first before you see any kind of mission list. Things like that.
Yeah, kind of like, well, one of my proposals was to have it more or less default to the advanced search with a button so that you can click to do a different search. Because I mean, when I first started using the Foundry, it took me a while to figure out which button you had to click on to do the advanced search at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
if you don't have the community, that's what I was saying. If you don't have the community telling you how to find this, you're right, Drogan. It is a very easy advanced search to use. But if you don't have the Foundry community of players and authors telling you it's there and how to use it and where to find it, you just don't find it.
And a lot of users don't want to, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they just want that top 50 list, and that's it.
Yeah, but I kind of help but wonder how many users have absolutely no idea the Foundry even exists. I mean, if you're a new player going through from level 1 Fed character up to level 50, do you see a mention of the Foundry anywhere? I mean, assuming you don't start digging around in the interface.
I don't think so.
Because I mean,
because I just did this not too long ago, and I don't think you do.
Yeah, I mean, and the way the system is designed now is, you could possibly go through from 1 to 50 without ever opening up the mission journal, because it all is auto rewarded and auto assigned.
Unless you get ahead of yourself in levels.
Oh, well, also, the mission journal no longer even mentions Foundry at all. I mean, it used to have the Foundry daily thing, which people would, they would learn about the Foundry from reading the the Foundry Daily thing,
Yeah,
but
the collect officer reports thing.
now that that's gone, there's not even that anymore. And that was the only mission in the game which ever mentioned the existence of the Foundry.
Yeah, the only official one. And then, of course, they're doing away now with Season 8.5. I think that's coming with Season 8.5 anyway. The
hourlies?
The hourly events, one of which was
Foundry.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
I did like his answer to that, though.
And I don't have details on how that's going to turn out because it hasn't been on Tribble as far as I know.
Right. Okay. So did anyone besides me listen to the Priority 1 interview?
Yes.
Bits and pieces.
Okay. Tony, their host Tony, one of his topics that he made sure did not get forgotten was what's happening to these various hourly events. And Al was very clear. He was like, you know what? I don't have my notes with me. I could be totally, some of these might not be right, but these are what I believe are what we're intending to do. And when Tony asked him about that Foundry hour where you get bonuses for doing stuff during that hour, he said that would be the kind of thing we're moving to a weekend event or a daily. He said we wouldn't want to do it with a daily because we already have those rewards associated with the spotlights, right? So he would talk about, he was saying that would be something that would be like a weekend Foundry event, which in my mind, that's really a cool thing. Like when they do an event that's based around the Foundry in any way, more people see the Foundry. Like when Brandon did his live stream, more people, found out about the Foundry that day than probably had in the last 6 months, I bet. You know what I mean? So anything they do. But, so I say, take it with a grain of salt. But
Knight Templar 99 is saying that he just recently leveled up character, and he said that he essentially never had to open the missions page.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
And there was no ever mention of the Foundry.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe like an introductory mission that has you go out and do a Foundry mission.
Well, kind of like that thing where it automatically gives you a mission to go to Memory Alpha and craft stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So do you guys remember when the website, and it might still have it, it probably doesn't with, everything moving over to Arc and things, but there was a time when I first started playing the game where the main website had a page that was like, they were super proud of the Foundry. You could click on it and it was like, here is a tutorial on how to make, and it was like I don't know, 5 paragraph long, 5 steps to make how to make something, interact with something and go do a mission. So
it's still up there. It's under the game.
Yeah. It is. It's under the game. See, that if there was some way in game that, just like Mark said, how you go to Memory Alpha and you get told how to craft something, if somewhere in the game, like maybe on the Klingon side, you go talk to one of the storytellers in front of the Great Hall. On the Federation side, you go talk to a historian, and something to that effect. And they walk you through. They give you one. They give you one free Foundry slot, and they walk you through how to do that 5-step mission creation. And then the player knows the Foundry exists, and I'd love to see something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something that pops up when you turn 10 or whatever that level is.
And all they have to do is give you one. They give you one slot, and then you can buy, the rest of your package for 10,000 dill.
Yeah, essentially a better entry point into Foundry for people who haven't done it before. That's an excellent suggestion.
So, I mean, something that was mentioned I think in all 3 interviews is the fact that, for the most part, any development I put into the Foundry is going to be focused on bug fixes. Now,
I like that too.
Yeah.
So certainly nothing wrong with that.
Because, I mean, especially after D'Angelo's interview, which kind of set off this whole thing.
Yeah.
The Foundry needs bug fixes really badly. I mean, the Foundry has
been
kind of
one for sure.
But I mean,
white objects.
even more so, the Foundry has been kind of accumulating bugs for a long time now, and
Yeah.
it's kind of gotten to the point where the bugs accumulate faster than they're fixed. And I'm just a little concerned that at one point it's just going to be so badly bugged that it's not going to be worth fixing.
We need to somehow
that'll take a long time, I think.
Need to somehow get your bug thread in front of D'Angelo himself.
Yeah, since now we know he's the guy in charge of the Foundry.
Yeah. D'Angelo, I know.
He's a tech guy. He's an engineer. He understands these things.
It's why bug fixes are happening.
I know Geko has looked at it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
good. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, there's some other things to talk about here.
There's a lot of news this week.
Yes. They've been.
I like that.
Crazy with the dev blogs. I love it. It's awesome.
So one other thing I want to point out from the interview, and I'm kind of curious what you guys make of this, is Geko was teasing that apparently a big Foundry proponent dev was returning.
Is coming
to the team.
back. Yeah, we got to talk about that.
That's right.
We do
the
have
question
to
is,
talk.
Who could it be? And I think there's maybe like two possibilities, which
exactly. There's a couple of possibilities.
Yeah, see, I thought the same person.
I thought that same thing.
Somebody suggested Zero, but she never left.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's still there.
She never really left.
She doesn't talk anymore. But
well, what has Zeronius been doing?
She got into producing.
Yeah, she got into producing. It's awesome. I'm glad of that. She's pretty cool. But yeah, he confirmed, we don't have a bigger proponent out there than Brandon. So everybody who's listening right now and who downloads our show later, there you go. That was basically said this week. Thanks, Brandon.
Community Manager Appreciation Day was what, like Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So big appreciation to Brandflakes for all that he's doing for us.
And I would say like happy anniversary to this show. We're a day away from them launching the anniversary celebration. It's the closest we're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
launches tomorrow, which
only a couple of days away from the 4th anniversary of the game itself.
Yeah.
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 Which for Foundry authors, there's a couple of things. I tweeted Brandflakes, and he had actually already posted about this. There is no Foundry downtime planned with this particular update.
Oh, yay.
Always good news.
That is good news.
Also, there's new ships being added to the game. The 3 new Dyson hybrid ships. Which, and this is one thing where Cryptic actually has a very good record of consistent updates to the Foundry, which is adding ships to the costume creator.
Adding things. They're starting
It's not 100%.
And occasionally there's bugged.
And you know what? Al, even during his primetime UGC interview, he was like, one of the things that I do now, he even said, like, one of the things that he does is when new things are being added, he tells people, remember to add that to the Foundry too. And that's one of the things that's just happening now. And so that means new things. We're going to see new mob groups as they make them, and it's going to be great. Like, I'm glad of that.
They've been good about some of that stuff. And so, I mean, I think we can reasonably expect to see those Dyson ships in some time.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not right away, but I think it's something you can kind of look forward to.
Well, the new look for the Apex, we're probably going to see that immediately.
Yeah, because I think that just filters down to anything that goes and retrieves that model.
I mean, because they changed the roving Hippiejohn ships to look like that, and the Foundry thing, if you select the Hippiejohn costume and not the generic ship costume that looks exactly like it or used to,
is it the new one?
Yeah, it should give you the.
I think Captain Revo was on Tribble and noticed that.
Nice. Nice. I'm glad it propagated.
Well, one thing that I forgot to ask about earlier is does the new Apex model, is it as big as the Venatic class was in the show, or is it scaled down?
Do not know the
It's
answer to that.
probably scaled down a little. You mentioned that, and I think, yeah, you're probably right. It's a great question. It's probably scaled down at least a little bit.
I mean, because somebody asked about that on the forum, is that why are they calling it an Apex battleship when it was called a Venatic class in the TV show?
Was it ever said that on screen?
I'm
because there
not
are some of those
entirely
ship
sure
classes that were never actually mentioned on screen.
That were never named, yeah.
Yeah, and they may
sure
just be keeping it because that's what they've always called it,
Right.
even when it had the other model.
It could be one of those things that came from a technical manual or something. I'm not sure, or it could be one of those things that got mentioned in a 2-second blip of dialogue and only one. I don't know. Anyways,
so yeah, but anyways, that's something new to look forward to, is new Hippiejohn ship models.
And more news. We got lots more news.
I just wanted to finish one thing quick.
Yeah, what is it?
In the TV show, the Venatic class or whatever was about twice the length of a Galaxy class ship.
That's why I said your question makes me think it's probably scaled down. So,
guess what?
Because the big version would make sense for an NPC dreadnought mob, but not a battleship mob.
Yeah.
One other piece of news that we have, just a little thing, but I think kind of cool. CrypticJoeJing, who is one of the Cryptic art team devs, has a thread going in the art forum about updating the textures on the Humanoid head 02, which, to call it what it really is, it's the Asian head style. Not to be insensitive, but that's what it really is.
That's what they tried to do. It's very obvious.
Yeah. And I think the improvements he's made are fantastic. I mean, he's getting a little flack from people who say that, they don't want anybody messing up their carefully crafted characters, and I get that. But the improvements are fantastic that he's showing off there. They're vastly improved. And I asked him if this would filter down to the Foundry character creator. He said that was the team's intention, that this texture would be included in the Foundry. Obviously, just for everybody's peace of mind, I would not take that as a promise. Just say that is their intention.
I think if anything can ever not be overstated, it's plans change. Everything is subject to change.
Sometimes daily.
Yeah. But anyway, why don't we move it along to what we've been working on? Hippie, have you been working in the Foundry?
I didn't get as much done this week as I would like to have. I had some things go on in my personal life this week that took precedence over sitting down with my video game and playing in the Foundry. But I have, in the past 7 days, I have gotten a good deal done on Mayhem Episode 3. Actually, the most complicated of the maps that I'm building is a Borg map, and it has vexed me. Many parts of it have vexed me since I started doing it, and in this case, every time I open it, the parts that were causing me huge problems before are just simple to solve. So I got a lot done on that map, is what I'm saying. And that was what I did in the Foundry this week.
All right. Mark, have you gotten any work done in the Foundry?
I've tinkered with 1 or 2 things, mostly this map we're sitting on, and I haven't gotten any real work done on anything.
Do a quick turn around here. Let's show everybody the map.
This is Mark. This is, as we said, this is Mark's kind of PvP proof of concept map.
Yeah, this is only a small corner of it. Well, guess I'll go with what I've been working on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Starts with an I, ends with a 2. I've been working more on part 2, still on map 8, but I have gotten through most of the 3rd section, and into the climax section, which is the big escape. Things are exploding, cameras are shaking. It's fun stuff. It's still really complicated, and I imagine I'll still have a lot of work to do, but definitely some lot of cool things happening.
So I was thinking, I just, in the Foundry Talk in-game chat, there are a bunch of people who have been working, I guess, on board maps, or people that have in their missions worked on board maps. And the thing that I was running into, just so that people know that, like, actually to say something about like more than just I did this map. What I've been doing this week was really figuring out how to line objects and details up on the preset board maps, I guess is what I would say. It got a lot easier for some reason with the white textures on some things. I don't know why.
Heaven forbid.
I know, like
actually,
the current
now
bug,
that I think about it,
it made lining up walls.
Sorry.
It made lining up walls easier. I don't know why.
I can see how that might happen.
The Borg assets are very busy. I mean, I've used Borg blocks in a lot of missions, and the outlines of them tend to fade into the background when you're just looking at them.
That's it. I think that's it. Like the textures on them, because they're Borg, are so busy that maybe they just became easier to use because I've been not seeing all of those textures. I don't know what it is, but for the time being, that's what I'm talking about with things being easier to use and easier to line up, is that. So
cool. Well, let's see. I've been working on my history mission, taking place back in the NX, or the Enterprise era. It's going to be all about the Romulan War. I started working on the interior of an NX class ship, which of course is going to be not terribly easy in the Foundry because we don't have those assets. We don't have any Enterprise interiors in the asset creator. So what I've done is, partially on a suggestion from Casmodian, used the holodeck arch. So I got a series of holodeck arches creating this corridor, and then I have this wall console or pillar console that's kind of curved at different intervals down the line. So it looks very, very cool. And I will at some point show off some screenshots of that. I think I've been tweeting them and things like that. What I'm working on currently, which is giving me some fits, is a transporter room, because that one's been very, very difficult to try and figure out and find a good facsimile of what appeared in the show. Now, the nice thing is, it's a few years after the end of the show, when this Romulan War starts, and it's not the Enterprise. So I can kind of explain that away at being a little bit different, because this is the Excalibur that you're going to visit, and so it doesn't have to look like the Enterprise.
Still kind of wonder if the Defiant, or the Belfast Defiant interiors could be used or redressed to look Enterprise era. Because I'm especially thinking like...
I mean, it's possible, but I think I got a good thing going. I mean, this just, it's a sky castle. It's going to be that kind of thing.
Well, my first thought was actually the generic ship interiors. I mean, yeah, there are certain aspects of those layouts that are very different, but you could, if you could redress them relatively easily to look right, or close to right anyways.
I may need different ones. I may need different ships, different parts of ships for later ones, because I would like to do a couple more in this series, because there's essentially like 3 major engagements in the Romulan War, as as laid out in a couple of different books now. The first one is a sneak attack by the Romulans on Starbase 1, which I showed you guys my Starbase 1 map not too long ago. And the second one is an attack on Earth itself, which is a major space battle. And then the other one is an attack on Charon and a diversionary attack on Romulus, so which essentially ends their ability to fight the war. So, you're gonna need to see some more like NX style interiors, and I don't know. I'm gonna try and build as much of it as I can with the intention that I can duplicate it when I start those and use other parts of it. But it's going to take a lot of work to find something that really looks, gives you the feel of the old NX Enterprise without being a facsimile, because it can't do a facsimile. All right, why don't we move it on to mission reviews? And I'm going to start us off because I've got a little bit of limited time here tonight. So, Dragoon, if you want to get ready to throw up our video.
Everything.
We're going to try a little experiment tonight. Idrona, who does videos, actually video captured himself playing the mission that I reviewed. He gave it to me, and I edited it down to some particular...
That is great.
And here we go. So, the mission that I reviewed is In Pursuit of a Cold Front by XR377. This is the author we had on last week. He's one of our favorite authors. Did my personal favorite mission, Personal Reflections. Has the missions all about Amanda Barkley. Should mention that Idrona here is flying a scimitar. I was playing on a Federation character instead of a Romulan, but that's okay. Now, In Pursuit of a Cold Front is basically an homage to The Hunt for Red October. I'm a big fan of both the book and the movie, so I thought, awesome, I'll go for that. And I say it is very, very close copy of that of the movie. There's a lot of lines from the movie. Essentially, you take the part of the Dallas, one of the submarines, the American submarine, and you are sent out to essentially the border with the Breen to kind of investigate reports of certain Breen predations. And there's few space battles here, and you start following this massive Breen dreadnought. Now, I'm not entirely sure I'd seen a Breen dreadnought in this game before. It is a strange looking thing.
Yeah, they do exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things are really, really long.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at them, you'd think they're flying backwards all the time, but they're not.
Because the big part's at the front. So, a large part of this mission is actually following this Breen dreadnought. Like how submarines are able to follow each other. And if you're behind another submarine, they can't detect you with their sonar because of their propeller. Oh, and I should mention one quick thing. If you're doing something with Ferengi females and you want to be canonically accurate and have them naked, which, they are in the shows, they're required to be so, except, the shows got around that a lot. You can actually do it in the Foundry. If they're, in dialogue, you just put them in the formal wear, the formal dress. And it's below the level of the thing in the Foundry, so you don't see it. It looks like they're naked without actually being naked, because of course I think that would probably be a EULA violation. So this is one mission where I've seen the nebula effect used to very, very good effect. because it makes it really makes it feel like submarine warfare, and that's one of the things that I love when they do on Star Trek, which is like, oh, there was that mission where, or that episode where the Defiant was in the atmosphere of the planet. I think that was really very cool. So one of the things that he has you do involves, there's an officer from the Enterprise, actually, he says, who wants to get on board your ship because he's an expert on this particular Breen ship. So, or actually, it's captain more like. So they come in a shuttle. The shuttle doesn't want to stick around because there's some Breen or Orion Raiders, Orion, I think, in the area. So he ejects in an EV suit. The dialogue tells you this. And then BorrowedTune says Balanced Terror. That's another good one for submarine-style warfare in space. So he essentially ejects, and you have this button available to pick up this guy. It's an interact with object, but there's enemies around, so you can't do it until you destroy the enemies. And it's telling you he has only minutes of air left. And I love it because it creates this sense of urgency that, oh, I gotta blow these guys up first. I gotta save this guy. So that's brilliant. I loved it. And then you go back to following this Breen Dreadnought around, observing it, because in the plot you don't know what it's doing. Maybe it's defecting. Maybe the captain's gone crazy. I mean, if you know the story of Hunt for Red October, you know which is that's going to be. But if you haven't, then you're in the dark here. So one of the things I liked about this mission was that kind of submarine warfare, and following a ship around doing a patrol, gives you a lot of different options for triggers. You can trigger this things to happen because you know where the player is going to be in space, and you know roughly what elevation they're going to be. Because when you're following a ship, you're not going to be too far off in elevation usually. See there, you can trigger dialogues based on reach markers. This is one, when you're following something on a patrol, this is one time where space reach markers are great because they work. Let's see, a lot of the dialogue was pretty good. A lot of it was lifted from the Hunt for Red October, but he provided you a lot of other dialogue options, which is excellent. Now there was one part that really was cool, and actually Bazag did this on Purity 2, where you start off in a shuttle interior, this custom shuttle interior, which is essentially, it's just kind of a small box with some seats and some consoles. Then you trigger it to disappear, and it's like you have landed your shuttle, and you're now stepping out of the shuttle into the shuttle bay of this ship. Now, unfortunately, the rest of this map, this is one of the last maps in the game, or in the mission. It had some issues, and you'll see these issues in the video. Because what he tried to do was put in a timer mechanic. I know a lot of people have tried to use this, and in this one, it creates some problems for the mission. Essentially, what you do to sort of force it to be a timer is you put some enemy mobs and some friendly mobs in a room off by themselves, and you trigger things to happen when, on component complete, set it to one of those mobs. So when they get killed, something happens for the player. In this case, the idea is you're supposed to go around and activate consoles to fight a battle, to man bridge consoles, which is very cool. However, and at the end of the timer, when everything counts down, or when all the mobs have been destroyed off in that other room, then it actually advances the mission. However, as you can see in the video, the mobs are coming through the walls. Obviously, this is one of those bugs that should be on the list. Is porous walls.
It's a bug, and it's not a bug.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. It is, but it isn't.
It's
Yeah.
actually
I agree, though.
it's an overzealous fix.
Is
Um, it's a case of in order to keep NPCs from getting stuck in walls and whatnot, they put in code to allow them to pop through if they really want to enough. It does the same for bridge officers.
so any way to prevent it?
The only way I found to prevent it is to double wall.
So if he added some more walls in there between
Put up a layer of two invisible walls. But even if they can pop through the first one, the second one pushes them back.
Okay. Well, XR, if you're listening, give that a shot. Because I mean, otherwise it would be a great mechanic. Because you would hear the sounds of battle, all of that, and that your timer would work correctly, and you wouldn't end up fighting a ground battle when you're supposed to not be fighting a ground battle. The chat room is also suggesting that P. Sutherland says invisible walls, box them in. So I gave this mission 4 stars because I think really that was the only technical issue I saw, and of course being a fan of the story, I thought that was pretty good. And big thanks to Idrona for videoing for me. And so one thing I wanted to bring up to you guys to have you talk about, because this is something that we've been talking about on the forums, is I think this mission went a little too far towards the spectrum of between homage and copy. I think it went a little bit too much towards copy, because a lot of the dialogue was lifted right from the movie.
Okay.
And I think too much.
So I haven't played the mission, but I had seen that thread that you're talking about. I found it to be a really interesting thread and a really interesting thing to talk about, actually. But I had to think about it. I'm glad you're bringing it up. Like I say, I haven't played the mission, but I think there is a really fine line, and I don't know what it is.
Step over that line.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a moving target, kind of.
Exactly. That fine line that's a great way to put it. It's a moving line, because you might step over it and not even mean to. And not even have been looking to do anything that went remotely close to stepping over any, like, so when you say lifted directly from, are the lines
like word
changed word for word, not even changed for like the Trek setting?
No, they were definitely changed for the Trek setting when it was needed to be.
When it was needed to be. So that kind of becomes a parody in its own way.
I've
I don't
played
know.
the mission, and he follows the script of the mission very closely, except that, I mean, there are obviously certain things that had to be changed, and he changed those, and actually,
and he
so some of the
you
things
other
that didn't
options
work,
besides
he just kind of left out, really, because honestly, the Foundry mission is a lot shorter than the movie was.
Oh yeah, because you're only seeing things from the perspective of the Scott Glenn character, the captain of the Dallas. That's you, who you play, which actually I think is a brilliant idea to put you in that position, because that's one of my favorite characters in the movie. So and you get the dialogue that he says, often verbatim, and I don't know. I think it crossed over the line a little bit. I think if he could just change things up a little bit more, some little bit different wording on those that are lifted from the movie, then it'd be fine. I'd love it. And I do really like the mission.
Well, I mean, one thing that popped out at me that reminded me that it wasn't an exact copy when I played it is the way your character talks to the Breen. Not the guy that you're there to kind of sort of help, but the other Breen that are chasing him. I mean, because you more or less don't talk to them. In the movie, there's this Russian ambassador guy who's kind of oily, and actually very talkative, and it's like, yes, we would love to help and stuff, but I can't really discuss the exact particulars of that, blah 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 blah. And at the end of the movie, he actually asks you, the captain of the Dallas, for well, not the captain of the Dallas, sorry, but a U.S. ambassador for assistance in locating another of their vessels that mysteriously disappeared. Actually, it got sunk by the Dallas, but they don't know that apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on that in the movie that you don't see that he tells you have gone on in this mission. Because the Alec Baldwin character, which is in this case a woman who's an officer from the Enterprise, comes aboard your ship and tells you all this has been happening. Which is good, because you wouldn't be, as a starship captain out on the edge of space, you wouldn't be privy to those conversations unless somebody told you about it. So I think I think he made a great choice in how he did the mission, other than just that dialogue issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I noted as being a very, very direct copy was how he replicated the scene where they're communicating via sonar pings. It was clever and a total knockoff at the same time.
Yeah, so it's like we said, it's a very fine line, and someone else might play this mission and have absolutely no problem with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of go back to Zorbane's Duratanium Man as a really good example of homage without plagiarism.
It's an affectionate parody.
Yeah, because I mean, it's very clear that it is still a work of Zorbane's, even though it's based on Iron Man. I mean, it most borrows elements. It doesn't try to recreate it.
Well, I did my. Oh, go ahead, Hippie.
I was going to say, I think with Duratanium Man, the reason that it works is because I'm not sure how many, I think Zorbane knows enough about, he knows about the superheroes that he knows about from so many different sources that no one source becomes his, his thing that he's parodying. So it all becomes kind of its own fun, wacky Trek-like version of the superhero that he's parodying. That's what I see.
He's taking from any one source,
right? He's not following any of the Iron Man stories that ever really happened. He skews close to them and then veers very far away, kind of deal. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
What I would find hilarious is if he was to do a parody of the Dark Aegis story.
I don't know if I know those.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
It was from the 90s era Iron Man cartoon show. It was this one-off episode where at the beginning of the episode, we have no idea how or why, but Iron Man, War Machine, Titanium Man, and this supervillain who's wearing this armor called the Dark Aegis are fighting each other on this alien planet somewhere halfway across the galaxy.
See, this is why we need the Foundry and Champions Online. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. We're going to do an episode.
How awesome would a storyline be for that?
We're going to do an episode in Champions. We
are planning to do that.
That's going to be in the future, here in season 2. Yeah, I found that I was like, okay, the Dark Aegis. I was like, what do I not know? And then you were like, well, it was this thing that happened in the Iron Man 90s cartoon. It was a one-off episode, and I'm like, no wonder I don't know. it's like
I mean, you weren't watching Iron Man cartoons in the 90s?
I'm like, I have it on DVD.
Get with it.
Come on now.
I'm like, it's going on 20 years ago. No, I was watching Spider-Man.
Honestly, yeah. I wouldn't watch an Iron Man back then. I was watching Ninja Turtles and X-Men.
I was watching Spider-Man and X-Men.
And Exo Squad. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
DuckTales, yeah. Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck,
yeah.
my
Good
favorite
stuff.
superheroes.
I watched a
Animaniacs.
lot of cartoons when I was a kid.
Which is why we all like Miranda Mayhem so much. Because it's a 90s cartoon.
She is totally a 90s cartoon or a 70s cartoon, depending on how you look at it. You know, my original thought was she's, going to be a Josie and the Pussycats reference, and then she turned into Jem in the Holograms because she's a weird looking alien. So,
but I like harking back to those things. I love homages. I mean, I made a whole mission. My Klingon Spotlight mission is based entirely on the lyrics of a song, which is Whiskey in a Jar. I think the original is by Thin Lizzy, which might have even been an old drinking song before then.
Yeah, it's actually
and I like the Metallica version personally.
Well, Whiskey in a Jar. You could find versions of it done by Jerry Garcia because he found it. It was an old blues standard, and he loved it. So yeah, it's an old blues standard. It's an awesome song. I know what you're talking about.
I mean, my whole mission follows the lyrics of that song.
Nice.
So but yeah, it's a fine line, and we're not going to solve it in one night. That's for sure. Make it black and white. So let's see. Mark, did you have another mission or two you wanted to mention?
I played a mission by BorrowedTune called what's that called? Hold on a sec. I need to look it up on the forum.
Who is in the chat room, by the way? Hello, BorrowedTune.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm not in the chat room, everybody, but I had to shut down lots of programs to be able to both be talking and in game at the same time. Unfortunately, one of those was my internet, my browser.
Apparently,
Now,
we tickled.
Oh yeah, A Taste of Collateral Damage.
Ah, there we are.
Ooh, awesome.
That's an interesting title. I
Well,
have to say.
the basic premise of the mission is that the Federation is in the diplomatic negotiations with a third party that this race has had a history of, shall we say, questionable choices in resource management, and is now forced to live in a massive array of space stations orbiting their homeworld because their homeworld is not a nice place to live. And you get there and you find out that this race has also, part of their issue is a series of civil wars, which seemingly have been resolved and are behind them. Then you get there, you talk to them about various, scientific experiments they've been doing, things that they want to share with the Federation, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out that one of their science experiments has gone rogue, Khan style, and decided to create a new civilization in the ruins of the old civilization on their homeworld. And of course, you end up having to track this guy down at the behest of the Federation ambassadors because, they're concerned that his actions as a terrorist will have a negative impact on their diplomatic negotiations with the with this race that they're trying to acquire this new technology from. Then you find out that the character that you're looking for is basically this world's version of an augment, and that the people that created him more or less created him to be the organic equivalent of a robot, even though he's an actual living thing. And he somehow ended up as a normal thinking person rather than the robot that they wanted him to be. Which is the part where he goes rogue and decides he wants to liberate his brethren, etc., etc., etc.
So can I ask a plot question here?
Yeah.
All of these elements, they all sound really good. I basically feel like I've played the mission, or part of it. How are they presented and how are they put together? And like the characters that reveal these things through dialogue, like in like where are they where are they presented? And like does this guy have a really strong sense of like how dialogue, like how people talk back and forth, that kind of thing, like how are we learning all of this, basically, in the mission? How do we learn all of this?
It's a rather long mission, and you learn about things in a lot of pieces. So you on the first map, you learn about the diplomatic relationship between this race and the Federation. Then the next map, you learn about the race's science experiments and find out that this renegade exists. Then on the next map, you find out why the renegade is doing what he's doing, and it continues on from there.
I guess my question is, does any part of it feel like, because I hear you say it felt really long, does any part of it feel like it could be tightened up?
or made into 2 missions.
Yeah, or made into 2 missions. Like, what?
It really wouldn't make sense if you tried to make it into 2 missions, because part of what makes it long is that the first part of the mission is, well, I guess you'd say set up for the second part of the mission. And while there is this point in the middle of the mission where you could, separate it into 2 parts, the catch with that idea is that the second part wouldn't make sense without understanding why you were there.
You wouldn't want to take the risk that people would play part 2 without playing part 1.
Yeah.
Which happens. I know it happens. But I think probably what Hippie is saying is, does it flow well? Because there's a lot of different plot elements here, and does it flow well from one to the next?
Well, there is actually this one part of the story where it kind of goes off on, I guess you could call it a tangent, but kind of, sort of, but not really.
Is it necessary, do you think?
I'm not sure that I would necessarily call it necessary, but it's the way the story ends.
Well, and we don't want to give away how it ends.
Yeah, we don't want to. You know, and sometimes there's just missions where it just needs to be that long, quite frankly.
I mean,
that's what the story needs.
To get rid of this tangent-like thing, you would literally have to rewrite the second half of the mission. So.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Not if you were already done, essentially. If you were in the outline phase, and no big deal, but. All right, guys. Well, I am actually going to have to go, but part of the awesomeness of not being in charge of most of the technical aspects anymore is that I can go, and you guys keep talking.
Drogan, you tricked me.
You volunteered, as I recall.
You've been tricked into being the tech guy.
But I shall leave you guys to your discussion topics, and but I will certainly be back next week. I
kind of feel like the news is part of our discussion topics this week. Like we can expand on it, Well,
I mean,
and then Dragoon had a good topic. I thought that.
Yeah, I like Dragoon's topic a lot too.
But I think you guys will probably cover anything that I would say.
So my topic, for those of us who weren't in the meeting before we started the show, is what is the Foundry's place in the grand scheme of Stowe? because I mean, we as Foundry authors often see it from the perspective of the Foundry, and one of the things that Captain Geko made clear was that the Foundry is not a widely used piece of the game.
Yeah.
In fact,
As
I
I
mean, Foundry
suspected.
authors especially make up a very small minority.
I ran over here to make it easier for you to get all of us on the screen. I don't know. I can't see anything on the.
That's okay.
Oh,
Don't worry about it.
okay.
So I'm going to split this up into two parts, but I think the first part I want to talk about is why the Foundry as isn't as big of isn't as big of a part of the game as we as authors kind of sometimes believe it to be.
So.
And before anyone starts raging at me, there
uh,
will be another part that reverses that.
I don't think that that's something to rage about. Actually, I feel like Captain Geko, like I said before, I love this guy's honesty. He's risen to be one of my favorite people to hear interviews from because he's honest, and that's all I've wanted from them about the Foundry for a really long time.
Yeah.
Is tell us the truth. Just tell us what where how many people use it. Do help us understand why nothing's happening, and he did. He was very honest about it. And so I just think it's hard for us to hear that the community that works with the Foundry is so small that there's not a lot of development priority because that small community, as much as we spend on the game in various ways, we don't make a dent in the overall spending of the greater community of people who play the game. And so we're not high up there on the development priorities. And I
So
understand completely why. Like, I get it. It makes me sad, but I get it, you know? It's like,
I'm gonna expand on this a little bit and say that it's not solely about money. And hear me out.
okay.
A lot of it has to do with when they prioritize out development. They look at what is going to bring the biggest benefit to the game as a whole.
Yeah.
And improvements to the Foundry benefit the Foundry, but since that isn't a widely used portion of the game, its contributions back into the game as a whole are limited.
Right. I can't disagree. I don't think you're probably right. It's not solely about money, but I'm sure that's a good portion of it. If the Foundry were bringing in like tons and tons of dollars, we'd probably see more development on the Foundry. That to me, that's how businesses work. But the other thing that makes me understand why the Foundry is treated like it is, or why it has the development priority that it does, is the other thing that Geko said in his interview with PrimetimeUGC. He explained how the Foundry came about. He said the Foundry started, and it was they got the license for Neverwinter, and as they started to develop Neverwinter, they realized that traditionally Neverwinter has always had some sort of user generated dungeon, user generated content thing. And so they decided they wanted to do a Foundry in there. And really, he basically said, that's why it got into Star Trek, because they needed a test bed for what they were doing and what they were planning to do in Neverwinter. And now that they've got that out, pieces of Neverwinter can start to come back, but it's going to be a little at a time, and I can understand that. But he was honest. We were a test bed. I'm okay with that. Thanks for telling me the truth. You know what I mean?
So part two, but hopefully I haven't crushed any Foundry authors in this process. But part two I want to talk about is why the Foundry is actually I think the Foundry is a bigger deal than Cryptic realizes.
Oh, good, because I think that's true.
So, I mean, there are, of course, all the reasons like because we all love it and because it adds genuine story to the Star Trek and all of that good stuff, but those are kind of anecdotal reasons. They're feel-good reasons, and I think they're actually more substantial reasons for this.
I completely agree. I don't think it's just about Star Trek Online. I think it's about Cryptic, the entire company. I think it's about the whole company. Personally, I think the Foundry is huge, not just in Star Trek, but I want to hear what you're thinking about it.
Well, I mean, as I was kind of thinking about this topic, it occurred to me that whether intentionally or even unintentionally, Cryptic has, in a way, kind of gotten on the bleeding edge of something.
Yeah.
If you kind of look around the internet, you will notice that user-generated content is an emerging and booming thing for MMOs. Yeah. I mean, just look at games like EverQuest Next, which are making huge builds around UGC. And Star Trek Online has been doing it now for a couple years. I
can think of a few games that have had, large amounts of user-generated content in the past, but those weren't MMO games. Those were games where it was largely a single-player game, and people would use a mission creator to make a campaign map and share that with people, not
share it through bulletin boards or Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, that's what I've seen user-generated content before. This is new. Like what we're standing in right now is really new. When you did you call it bleeding edge or leading edge?
Bleeding edge. Emerging trends.
Yeah, that's why I think the Foundry is so important, and that somewhere in my mind, I hope that who's the CEO? It's Jack Emmert, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in my mind, I hope that he realizes how important, and whether it's important in Star Trek Online, I think it touched a real nerve in the Star Trek community that's always been there, which is fan fiction. I mean, I remember being a teenager going to Star Trek conventions before the internet. People were making, monthly or quarterly fan produced, thick magazines full of stories that you could read. There's always been a market. There's always been people who want to create Star Trek. And, I heard it mentioned somewhere else this week, for a time on The Next Generation, fan submitted scripts and story ideas were turned into episodes. So there's always been a place for this in Star Trek storytelling. So I think the Foundry hit a very specific niche and emotion that Star Trek authors have.
I almost kind of see it as a point on which Cryptic could be promoting the game. I mean, especially if they ever got the Foundry into Champions, they could literally go and say, look, our entire library has UGC. You guys are just now figuring it out.
That's what I see. You and I are that's why I was I want to hear what you're thinking, because I bet you were thinking the same thing. I think the company should put the Foundry in everything, or should be having a team focusing on a way to make this Foundry tool as good as it possibly, and it might be what's happening in Neverwinter. I don't know, but I want to see them having a team that's making the Foundry tool. I don't care what game it's in. I want a tool set of user-generated content tool set that they have, that they can put into all of their games, that once they have that, they update all of the games that they have and all the ones they're making into the code base that will, suit this. And then they put it into all of their games. And then exactly like you said, they can say everything we have contains a user-generated content tool, because we were on the leading edge and we knew this was going to be important.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I've been kind of going through a few reviews of Stowe, especially the more recent ones, and oftentimes, this is not meant to be a knock against PvP, but no review has ever, almost no review ever comments on Stowe's PvP. And why would they? It's pretty abysmal.
they've been ignoring it for longer than they've ignored the Foundry.
Yeah, but a lot of them comment on Stowe's Foundry because Stowe's Foundry is something different.
Was it 5 reasons or 4 reasons to play Star Trek Online?
Yeah.
We're on the top 4 or 5 reasons that people should be playing this game is the Foundry.
Yeah, so I mean,
in what was that, like Gamers First magazine or something? Like it was like a pretty big internet, and they have it was a big publication that has a print publication too, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the other ones that I've read were cases where they never even found the Foundry. But I mean, it's one of those things that when you list out all of the reasons that Stowe is different from all of the other MMOs, there are a few in there like the combined ground space combat and stuff like that, but the Foundry is almost always one of them.
It's because it's different.
Exactly. I mean,
when people talk about Neverwinter, they talk about it too, because it is such a different kind of tool for a massively multiplayer online game to have. It really is.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think I couldn't tell them that any like improvements to the Foundry would result in more plays, but I can tell you that I think that it is an untapped gem. That
I do too.
I mean, especially with Cryptic's marketing, I mean, through Perfect World getting so much better, because I mean, they've gotten so much better about how they market the game. I really think it's an untapped resource for marketing.
For me, it's not even so. When I heard the things that we have, like one of the things I wanted to talk about is we now have ideas about what probably is coming in the next little bit of time for the Foundry. We know that as was mentioned before, that the follow author feature and the campaigns are probably on their way, and that Captain Geko really he said this would not something they figured out yet, but he really likes the 3D nudger. You know what? I like all of those things. I think they would all be great additions, but I would rather that they really see how the tagging system didn't work the way that it's been implemented, that they took a look at all of the really serious, like, game-stopping bugs in the Foundry, the things that when you hit them, like when you're creating and you run into this bug for the first time, you're like, oh, this sucks, and you shut it off for at least a couple hours. Those kind of I want to see those. I'd rather see them fix what's broken, like before they start adding any, like the way that I heard Geko describe it was we're going to get a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and like we're going to get little updates, and I'm totally cool with that, and it'll happen very slowly. But I'd rather that first little update be fix all the things that have been broken, and when they break again, when they update to a new season, that's the first thing they do with the Foundry is fix those things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd rather have all of that be the first update and then start worrying about what little quality of life things you can add, like follow author and campaigns. There's just so much broken.
Geko said something interesting in his interview that I totally agree with, and that is that they need to look at what gets them the most bang for their buck. And especially when it comes to a Foundry, they really need to look at what will do the most for the Foundry with the least amount of development time.
Yeah, fixing bugs takes time. Yeah. I understand. That's why it's not happening.
I'm just hoping that they have enough people on the team who really do know the Foundry and know what is higher priority. Because I mean, I keep thinking back to like features that I would want in and assets and whatnot, and it's often smaller things would have greater impact. I mean, for instance, a one-way path. It's a feature. It's not a particularly prominent feature in Neverwinter, but it would
Right.
be hugely useful, or expanded trigger options.
Hmm. I
Um,
like all of those things. I do. I totally hear you. But for me, it really is about fixing the game
yeah,
breaking bugs in the
and you're
Foundry
right. I mean,
first.
that's the other thing.
It's not going to happen,
But I
but
mean,
that's what I'd
even
like
looking
to
at
see.
bugs, that there are probably bugs that are more important and bugs that are less important.
I'd like to find out, like, during his interview with Primetime UGC, Gecko was like, well, getting assets and details and stuff in there, we've got to figure out how to get a skunk team to come in on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know what a skunk team means, but whatever those people like to eat, I'll send it to them in droves on the Saturdays. I'll like call up California and order pizzas to go to their location. You know what I mean? It's like, really, like, I liked that he said, that's what it would take to get lots of assets in there, is to get
I,
people that
I,
are
I, th-
willing
I
to
think
work.
Skunk Team was a reference to like the whole Black Ops Ninja sort of thing.
I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I
Maybe.
have no idea.
Um, I don't suppose either of you or follow Star Citizen at all.
I do. I'm not following it hardcore yet
No.
because until I can get into it, I don't want to follow it.
Well, I
Does that
mean,
make
I
sense?
I,
it's a it's a
I occasionally read things that people post on the forums.
well, I mean, it's a crowdfunded game, and it's a really big and very devoted community behind it,
Hmm.
and they get so much free food. I mean, it's like incredible. It's like every week they get something catered from a fan, or a keg of beer, or something like that. I don't know.
I
Maybe
mean,
it's something we pitch in, buy lunch for everyone who come in on a Saturday and work
everybody
on
who makes
Foundry.
it in on that Saturday gets lunch on the Foundry community. That would be awesome, right? Um, I guess another thing that I liked that he talked about was that uh, th- that it's, and I might have been in the Priority One interview. He asked them a question. I can't remember which one of the interviews it was, but he asked the people interviewing him a question about, like, he was like, so this feature is getting added, and you really like this feature, right? This convenience thing, whatever. And they were like, yeah. And he was like, do you know why that's being added? And it took them a second, and they realized it's a technical feature. I think it's about the ship swapping, right? Technical feature being added, and it took them a second, and they all realized Stephen D'Angelo. He's the tech guy. And Al talked about how Dan was really big on story and how Stephen D'Angelo is really big on tech. And so I like that. And I like that they were talking about how, Foundry is now in that state where they're going to be like, what will happen will include bug fixes, and what little bit will happen will include that. So I liked that. I liked hearing that, and that also, in my mind, confirmed that Stephen D'Angelo has been intended for this position for a little while now. Like, 8.5 probably has more of his fingerprint on it than we're giving it credit for,
I
kind of
mean,
deal.
it's kind of hard to tell with game development because the
True.
cycle is actually very long.
That's very true too.
Um, so one last point I wanted to bring up about the founder being important is one day, and I think this is years off at the earliest. Um, one day this game will start to decline because all MMOs do,
Yeah.
and it'll probably spend some form of time in what is referred to as maintenance mode.
Maintenance mode, right?
And if the game ever gets into that state, it'll become the one big source of new content.
Yeah.
So in a way, I've always kind of seen the Foundry as the retirement plan for Stowe.
It really is. That's a great way to look at it. Holy crap. That's a great way to look at it. I hope that when, you're right, the game will someday decline. I don't think it's anytime soon. I think it's doing great. But someday when it declines and it's, that they put out there one of those, hey, you can have a single player version of the game and it includes this editor, so there can be bulletin boards where people like you and I and Mark and Drogan and any of the guys from Primetime and any of the authors could go on this bulletin board and share their missions with each other. That'd be super fun. That'd be the best case scenario if Star Trek Online ever goes away.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend like anything lasts forever.
No, neither am I.
Yeah, it's not fun to think about, but it is what it is. I guess.
Like I said, I don't.
The reason I don't think about it is it's doing so well right now.
Oh, and like I said, I honestly do not believe that Stowe's demise is anywhere close.
No, not at all.
Much to the chagrin of the Doomsayers.
Yeah. I'll let the Doomsayers, bang their drums and wave their signs and say doom, and I'll laugh at them every time and play the doomy doom song and think, okay, we're not really doomed. It's just
and of course, read the Doom thread on the forum for a few laughs.
Yeah. All right, Mark, did you have any thoughts? I know you haven't said too much.
Well, honestly, the stuff like the Foundry, I'm like you said, it's kind of odd to think about the fact that this is something as new as it really is. I mean, it's one of those things where you look back in retrospect and you're like, so why didn't anyone else do this before? I mean, because Blizzard has had mission editors in so many of their games in the past, but then when they start into making MMOs, they just forget they ever bothered with such things.
I actually wondered the same thing. That's a great point.
I think it's because when multiple people become involved, it gets so much more complicated. I mean, just from maintaining quality, because I mean, you can choose or not to download a questionable mod onto your own single player and have it affect no one but you.
You know what? Al even pointed out in the Primetime interview why game companies have shied away from this. I think he didn't answer it as the answer to that question, but I think it's the reason is he said he used to, before he came to Cryptic, he worked for The Sims Online. And he said they decided to just kind of not put a lot of oversight on it. And he said a week after they opened, you could pull back and see the neighborhood views and stuff. And a week after they opened the game, people had taken their rooftops and pixelated gay porn and swastikas. So you pull back to the neighborhood and that's all you saw. I mean, it's like that. That's why companies have shied away from it. Cryptic is the first people, or the first company I can think of that really have found at least a decent oversight mechanic for their user-generated content.
Yeah.
I haven't run into a lot of really offensive material ever in the Foundry.
But back when I was a Diablo 2 modder, one of the more infamous mods for Diablo 2 was, shall we say, something R-rated, and the base game has you hacking apart demons and various other monsters with swords, and blood splatters everywhere. So someone coming up with a way to make an R-rated mod for a game that involves mindless blood and gore as part of the core gameplay says a lot about the stuff that the certain parts of the community actually did when modding. And I think things like that is part of the reason why companies such as Blizzard, who made Diablo 2, are hesitant to do official user-generated content because they don't want to deal with the results of something like Blue Orange's mod ending up on an actual live server.
Exactly. That's I think why companies have strayed away from it. And I really think Cryptic kind of has it right. they're approaching it slowly. And I mean, during the interview, Al also said he's like, it's the I don't know if he said it's the damned, but he was like, it's the exploiters. He was like, we just had to crush another one. Like, I don't even know what it was. I don't care. But like, I'm glad I don't know what new exploit some jerk out there found in the Foundry to make the devs have to crush it instead of devote that time to maybe putting in an asset or something.
I mean, it's sad and pathetic, but people, to a lot of people in the game, they don't think of anything except in terms of mission rewards.
Yep.
So to them, the Foundry is simply a way to bypass the regular mission reward system, and that's all they think of for the Foundry.
I agree. But I think that's our answer to why other game companies haven't done it, is finding a way to there's two major things there that you've got to keep a real eye on, which is keeping the content friendly to the rating that you've chosen, and keeping the exploitation potential of your user generated content tool as low as you can. That's I think the two reasons. Those are two difficult things to do. Those aren't easy for the devs to handle, I'm sure. So,
all right. I think we've banged this one to death. Do we have any other discussion topics? I think we have time for at least one more.
I guess it's just that so I've seen a lot of people, Monday when I was very nervous, and Monday was a really weird day for me. That's all I'll say. And so like my response to them, like offering new uniforms with ARC, and like my response to hearing Al's Priority 1 interview and everything, like all of the what could be considered negative Foundry news. I had a negative response, and like two of my tweets were like snarky and negative that day. So I've seen a lot of people on the forums, people talking about it in various places that have people aren't angry exactly, but people are worried about the future of the Foundry tool that they like to use. And I just want to bring up that there are a lot of reasons to be really hopeful still, and really looking forward to the future of the Foundry. We're pretty assured, I think, that it's not going anywhere. Like, they're not going to come in and say, yeah, we're done with the Foundry, we're just going to get rid of it. It's not in Star Trek Online anymore. We're always going to have, probably for the length of the game, we're going to have this tool. And they are going to, I believe that they are going to do small updates. And we have seen that as they add new mob groups, that they've gotten very good about adding new assets and mob groups when they add them in. So these are things we can look forward to. It's not like just because the tool isn't getting any major new tech or major new updates, we don't really need them. We don't really need them. It would be nice to get those quality of life improvements, but my opinion is there's lots of things to still look forward to, and I think that people should focus on those things. And I'd like to just put that out there to the community. Start talking about the things that are great about the Foundry, because if all we're putting out there for the devs to hear is, oh, this is a negative opinion or this is a negative opinion, that's what they're going to hear, that all of us feel like, if that makes sense. So that's what I would say. That's, I'd like to hear other people's opinions on it in the chat room, in the forum thread. But, find ways to stay positive. I'm a snarky jerk sometimes, but I'm still working on missions and having fun.
Yeah, and I mean,
So,
and I think that we do have the supporters on Cryptic's staff that we do because we are a community worth investing in.
yeah.
Obviously, I mean, things won't always swing in our favor, but I mean, we've got people on the team that are arguing our case for us. I
Yeah.
mean, we know Brand Flakes is banging the drum as loud as he can, and Geko definitely seems pro Foundry.
Like I said, for me before, like Brand Flakes did a live stream of of that week's chosen Foundry spotlight. That was great.
Yeah.
That brought so much attention to the fact to that mission for one, which great mission, by the way. No review of it, but great mission. What was the name of it again? Is that Forget Me Not? Is that the one that
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to remember the name. Yeah, but great mission. Go play it, people. I did. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna review it, but
had some really impressive tech in there.
yeah, it's but that brought so much attention to the Foundry. If they do, we're live streaming a podcast from the Foundry every week. So far, we've been boring. We're not exciting yet. Like, I really want to plan our Champions show to be exciting and get Champions Online players to come watch too, because we're still going to be talking about the Foundry. But like, I want to plan ways for our shows to get moving more and things like that. But regardless, there's a lot out there being done with the Foundry. And there's people just need to we need to find ways to get ideas of making it more visible in front of people that can make things like that happen, if that makes sense. So right now I feel like the Foundry is invisible. That's my biggest problem with it. It's hard. There are people who don't even know it exists, and it's hard to find missions that exist. Such a fun tool too.
Yeah, and it's a tool that I think, at least for me, really pushes me to push myself. I mean, to try and think outside the box, try to push my own abilities, do something just a little bit cooler, just a little bit better. Try to solve some problem. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is when someone posts like, "How do you do this?" and the most obvious answer is, "Well, you can't." My mind immediately starts whirling. It's like, well, what if you did this, or what if you faked it by doing this? I mean,
I do the same. I do the exact same thing. The Foundry, to me, I try to eliminate can't from my vocabulary. I try to say anything I want to do, it's possible. It might be more work than I want to do, but it's probably possible.
Well, one thing that I found myself doing in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I forget exactly when it was trying to find a workaround for making a dialogue pop up when a character walked to a specific spot and interacted with something.
Nice.
But see, because what I was trying to do was I was trying to do a quest dialogue without making it an actual quest dialogue. Why I bothered, I don't know, but.
But I mean, you got Drogon right now who's trying to build an NX-01 interior out of what we have. That shouldn't be possible.
I think it's totally possible, because I think anything that we want to do in the Foundry, we can do. It's all a matter of what is your limit of this is more work than I want to do. For me, that I have my limit of that. So, but I'm finding that with every mission I make, and with every time I log into the Foundry, that extent of I don't want to do this is lessened, if that makes sense.
I know
because I learn something new every time.
Before I got into the Foundry, I would come and go in phases, and usually around new content, burn through it, go away, do something else for a while. And getting into the Foundry has kind of forced me to really be consistent.
It hasn't forced me to. It's just given me. It made me realize that there's always something new to do in the game, because I was just like you. I'd play around new content and I would grind a little bit. But once I got into the Foundry, there's always something new to do.
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
There's always a reason to come back. And
yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other topics?
Yeah, maybe time for a short one, if anybody else has got anything.
Yeah. We've got about 10 minutes left. How about somebody in the chat room? I don't know if anybody's in the chat room because it's not open for me.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat room, mention a topic. Anyone but Realm Time, if he's there.
I don't see Realm.
Well, we have this new guy named Knight Templar who's been posting stuff, and Sir Boulevard, who I have no idea who that is either.
I like Sir Boulevard. I met him in the Foundry Talk channel. Let's talk about that, actually.
Ooh,
let's real quick mention that in game right now, authors and I'm just gonna. So one of the authors that we've reviewed their missions, I think Drogan and Mark have both reviewed Collectiveness Strikes Gold. That Stouts, the author of those missions, created an in-game channel called Foundry Talk. Now, I don't remember the command you type into your chat bar. I think it's join channel or channel join Foundry Talk.
Yeah, if you right-click on your tabs, you can bring up a channel search.
People figure that part out.
It's a channel _ join.
Yep, there is channel _ join. Cool. There is a chat channel in game started by Stouts called Foundry Talk. It is full of Foundry fans. The guys who do the synergy playthroughs are in there talking to authors all the time. Authors are getting together and running around doing the missions that feel very grindy if you have to do them by yourself, doing them together and just having fun organizing through this channel. Authors are asking and answering each other's questions. This channel is great. I'm on it every time I log into the game. I don't always say something because maybe I'm working in the Foundry or really focused on a character, but to me, Foundry Talk is a great new channel, and people who listen to our show, download our show, get involved in it, because it's a really growing community of people who want to talk about the Foundry, and I think cheers. Cheers to community efforts like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, I mean, I know you never think about it, but I mean, it's like every week we see some new Foundry author pop into the forums or on the channel to ask some questions. It's always, hey, I'm new to the Foundry, but I was wondering if this could be done, or how do you do this, or this isn't working, how do I fix it? No, I mean, it's actually, I mean, it's very encouraging to see new authors coming in.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, well, I think that's about as...
we're right about at our 2 hours. I'm going to jump up on the table here.
Before we go, let's go over our contact info, which I made a really cool graphic for.
Awesome.
You can email us at foundryroundtable@gmail.com. Submit missions that you'd like us to review, or have a suggestion for a topic that you'd like us to discuss. You can also follow us on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. That is as many characters as Twitter would let us have, so it's just Foundry Roundtab. You can follow Drogan at Drogan1701. You can follow Hippiejohn at Hippie _John, and you can follow me, Greendragoon, at Greendragoon.
Ooh, but before we go, we should walk around this map to let people look at it.
Yeah, we can do a quick tour.
People are probably wondering what the rest of it looks like.
But everybody needs to jump on the table. It's a big round surface. Miranda Mayhem is my only toon who... It's not a perfect circle, but Miranda Mayhem is my only toon who carries things like this, and so... Okay, wait, now I have to wait for Red Alert to go away. Darn it.
Remember,
Red
use
alert always
disco ball
lasts too
first.
long. Oh yeah, there we go. Ding, 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 ding. Sorry.
All right, that's probably
Miranda
about as
Man.
good a place to end as any. All right, so good night, everyone.
We're going to keep we can keep the stream going for a little bit of after show to wander around the map with anybody still in the chat room, and yeah, Mark's taking off, followed by my security team.
Let's do our goodbyes. Good night, everyone.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
All right.